The first cut of the day came from paper, not a knife. Ava had left a white crane on the kitchen table wings, folded, sharp beak aimed at my coffee mug like it was keeping score. The apartment smelled like toast and printer ink. The toast was real. The ink lived in my head. I edited for a living, which meant I spent my nights rearranging other people's sentences until they sounded like confidence. My phone buzzed against the counter. School pickup 310. "Dad," Ava called from her room. Her voice had that careful tone she used when she wanted something and didn't want to look like she did. I found her on the carpet, a stack of square papers fanned out beside her knees. Blue, red, yellow, a few printed with tiny stars. She wore her school polo and a lopsided ponytail she insisted was even. "Which one looks like a real bird?" she asked, holding up 2 cranes. "The second," I said. She smiled and pressed a fold flat with her thumb as if she could teach the paper to remember the sky. "This one is for you," she said, and set it on the dresser where I kept my keys. "For me. So you don't forget to come back," she said, like it was an obvious risk. I swallowed. "I don't forget." Ava studied my face, then grabbed her backpack and hooked her arm through mine. Outside Washington, D.C., moved fast and sharp. Suits crossed the street in clusters. A siren slid by and vanished. The air tasted clean and metallic. At the crosswalk, Ava squeezed my hand. "Are you working late?" "Not tonight," I said. She didn't smile, but the tension in her shoulders eased. At school, she ran to her friends, then turned and waved once, quick and brave. The doors swallowed her. My phone rang as soon as I stepped away. Unknown number. I let it buzz. It rang again. I answered because that's what you do when you need a paycheck. "This is Mason." A pause, then a voice smooth enough to make you forget the edge underneath. "Reed, Grant Kessler." My spine tightened. Grant had been Victor Lang's second in command. After Victor died, Grant became everyone's boss without ever looking surprised by the promotion. "Grant," I said. "We have the Hartwell edits," he replied. "Author wants an answer tonight. Come in." "I can work from home," I said, "after my daughter's asleep." Silence, then a soft exhale that carried judgment without using the word. Home invites mistakes. "Our work invites mistakes," I said before I could stop myself. Grant didn't bite. He never did. He let people cut themselves. "Victor used to say you were dependable," he said. I stopped walking. Foot traffic split around me like water around a rock. "Victor said a lot of things," I replied. "Tonight, 9, Grant said. "Keep your phone on." The call ended. My screen went dark, and for a second I saw my own face reflected back, pale and too tired for a man in his 30s. Ava came out of school with her backpack, bouncing cheeks pink from recess. She climbed into the car and started talking about a class pet and a kid who traded a marker for half a granola bar. Her stories had loose ends and unnecessary details. They were perfect. At home, she spread homework across the table. I set a pot of water to boil and tried to stay inside the small domestic rhythm pencil scratching kettle, rattling the soft thud of Ava's feet when she swung them under the chair. Then there was a knock. Not the neighbor knock. Not the quick tap from Mrs. Jennings next door. This was measured. 3 knocks spaced like punctuation. Ava's pencil stopped. She looked at me without speaking. I wiped my hands and went to the door. Through the peephole, a delivery driver held a flat envelope and a bouquet of white lilies wrapped in brown paper. I opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" "Delivery for Mason Reed," he said. "Need a signature." I signed on his screen. The lilies smelled sharp, almost sweet, too strong for a small apartment. He handed me the envelope, nodded once, and left without waiting to see what I did with it. Ava leaned forward over the table. "What is it?" The envelope was heavy, cream stock, silver foil lettering that caught the light and threw it back at me. My name looked expensive. I turned it over. Return address Lang Estate, Great Falls, Virginia. Ava squinted. "Lang like Mr. Lang?" "Victor Lang," I said. Her mouth twisted. "The one who made you work on my birthday." I didn't defend him. I couldn't. Victor Lang had paid well and demanded more than money ever covered. I'd learned to live on caffeine and apology. I slid a finger under the flap. The paper resisted, then gave with a dry tear. Inside was an invitation card thick and cool against my skin. Silver foil again too bright for something that claimed to be about grief. A celebration of life for Victor Lang. I read the date. I read the time. I read the address twice as if repetition would turn it into something sensible. Ava watched my face. "Is he still dead?" she asked. "Yes." "Then why a party?" I pulled out a smaller card tucked behind the invitation. Handwritten note in black ink. The pen had pressed hard enough to leave grooves in the paper. "Mason. Your presence would mean more than you realize. Please come. Vivian." Ava sounded the name out. "Vivian is the lady from the funeral, the pretty one." I remembered her standing beside the coffin, two still hair pale against black fabric. People spoke to her and she answered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes," I said. Ava picked up the crane on the table and turned it in her fingers. "Do you want to go?" "I don't know," I admitted. She tilted her head. "Are you scared?" "No," I said, and felt the lie land between us. Ava didn't argue. She set the crane beside the invitation white paper next to silver foil. The crane looked like something made by hands. The invitation looked like something made by money. "You never go anywhere," she said, "not cruel, just clear." I opened the lilies and put them in a glass of water. Their scent spread, filling corners of the room like a message you couldn't delete. "Finish your homework," I told her. She went back to her pencil. I sat down with the invitation and the note, tracing the indentation of Vivian's handwriting with my thumb. A faint, gray smudge touched my skin like I'd brushed wet ink. I stared at it for a moment, then washed my hands at the sink until the water ran clear and my fingers looked clean again. I dried them on the towel slow. From the table, Ava hummed under her breath, counting her math problems. The invitation lay between us, edges gleaming. I set a fridge magnet on it to keep it flat, then sat back down. I left the invitation on the table through dinner, as if it might evaporate if I refused to touch it again. Ava ate in quiet bites, eyes flicking to the silver letters whenever she thought I was not looking. "Do people send flowers when someone dies?" she asked. "Sometimes," I said, "but he died already." I turned my fork over in my hand. "Some people keep saying goodbye until it sounds right." Ava rolled the paper crane between her fingers. "Do you have to go?" I was asked. "By Vivian," she said, trying the name like a new word. I nodded. Ava watched me a long second. "If you go, you come back." "I come back," I told her. Bedtime stretched. A sip of water, another story, one more minute with the light on. When I tucked the blanket under her chin, she caught my sleeve. "Don't wear the sad suit," she whispered. "The suit is not sad. It makes your eyes look different," she said. After she fell asleep, I stepped into the hall and called Mrs. Jennings next door. She answered with the television loud behind her. "You going somewhere fancy?" she asked. "For a few hours," I said. "Could you sit with Ava?" "For you always," she replied. "And if anybody knocks, I will stare them down." "I believe you," I said. She laughed once and hung up. At 6:45, a rideshare idled at the curb. I slid into the back seat with the invitation in my jacket pocket. The driver glanced at the address and made a sound of appreciation. "Great Falls," he said. "That is money, money." The city thinned behind us. Streetlights spaced out. Trees rose on either side of the road. My phone buzzed with a work email from Grant Kessler. No subject line. 2 words. "Be punctual." We turned onto a narrow road along the river. The Potomac flashed through the trees, black water catching the last light. Then the gate appeared tall iron, a crest stamped into the metal like a signature. A camera swung toward the car. A voice on an intercom confirmed my name. The gate slid open. Inside, the driveway wound through manicured lawn. Small lights aimed upward, turning tree trunks into columns. The house at the end was pale stone and wide windows, a place built to be seen from a distance. The driver whistled. "That is a whole lot of house." I paid him and stepped out. The air smelled of cut grass and something floral that did not come from the ground. Torches lined the path, flames steady and tame. A tent had been raised on the lawn, white fabric glowing from within. A string quartet played something slow enough to disappear into conversation. Guests stood in neat circles, drinks in hand, laughter arriving in short, careful bursts. I took a champagne flute from a passing tray because refusing would draw attention. The glass was cold. The bubbles tasted sharp like a dare. Faces drifted past that I had seen in conference rooms and on book jackets. Authors with bright smiles and tired eyes. Executives who spoke in compliments and moved like they owned the air. A woman in pearls who looked familiar from the news, her hand resting on a man's arm as if he might float away. Everyone dressed for grief like it had rules. I sipped the champagne and let the noise wash over me. A waiter passed with small plates of food I could not name. Something fried, something raw, something wrapped in a thin slice of cucumber. I took one and tasted salt and lemon and money. A man I had edited for 2 years recognized me and lifted his glass. "Mason Reed," he said, as if my name belonged on the spine of a book. "I heard you survived Victor." "Barely," I said. He laughed. He pushed because he believed. His smile softened. Or because he could. Before I could answer, he was pulled away by someone more important. Near the house, a man with Victor's cheekbones leaned against a stone column, drink in hand. His tie hung loose, his eyes shiny. He stared at the tent like it offended him. When he noticed me looking, he raised his glass in a slow salute. "You work for the new king," he said, words slightly thick. "I work," I replied. He stepped closer, and I caught the sour edge of whiskey. "They all think this is about mourning," he said. "They always think that." He laughed once sharp, then wandered back toward the shadows by the door. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mrs. Jennings, "Ava asleep. I'm watching my show. Do not worry." Near the bar, Grant Kessler stood with a low glass of whiskey watching the room without moving his head much. His suit fit him perfectly. His expression did not. He noticed me and walked over. "Read," he said. "Grant." His gaze dropped to my champagne. "Bold." "It was offered," I said. Grant's mouth curved. "Everything here is offered." "She invited me," I added, and hated how it sounded. His eyebrows lifted. "Vivian invited you personally?" "Yes." He let the word sit. His cologne smelled like cedar and clean alcohol. "Hard year for her," he said. "It has been a year," I replied. Grant looked past me toward the house. Victor would have appreciated the turnout, he said. He loved an audience. He loved control, I said. Grant's smile stayed in place, but his eyes sharpened. "Control keeps people safe," he answered, gentle as a warning. A burst of laughter rose nearby. Grant stepped back, becoming social again. "We have work Monday," he said. "Try not to drink too much." "I have a daughter," I said. Grant nodded once. "Then you understand stakes." He drifted away toward a cluster of board members, leaving my collar tight against my throat. I turned toward the house and found Vivian at the top of the stone steps, framed by warm light. A simple white dress fell straight to her knees. No jewels, only a thin chain at her throat. Her hair was pale, almost silver loose over her shoulders. She looked less like a widow and more like someone who had decided grief would not take anything else from her. She came down the steps without hurrying. People made room for her without noticing they were doing it. "Mason," she said when she reached me. Hearing my name in her voice felt too intimate for a lawn full of strangers. "Mrs. Lang," I began. "Vivian," she corrected. I offered my hand out of habit. She ignored it and leaned in, kissing my cheek once, light and precise. Her perfume was clean and expensive, like soap and cold air. "Thank you for coming," she said. I was surprised, I admitted. "I wanted you here," she replied. Up close, her eyes were gray, the color of rain on asphalt. I noticed the faintest smudge of black under one fingernail, like she had touched ink and forgotten to check. "You look tired," she said. I have a child, I answered. Her gaze softened, then tightened again, as if she had stepped onto a thought she could not afford. Ava, she said quietly. You remember her name, I said. I remember what matters, Vivian replied. Someone called for her from behind, voice bright and impatient. Vivian turned her head and smiled at the room. The smile fit like a mask. Then she looked back at me and let it drop. Stay a while, she said. I can. Her fingers brushed my sleeve, quick and deliberate. Come inside with me for a moment. I need your help with something. She moved toward the open doors and I followed her in. The air changed the second we crossed the threshold. Outside had been torchlight and string music. Inside was cooler, dimmer, scented with polished wood and lilies that had already started to sweeten into something heavy. Vivian did not look back to check if I was following. She moved through the foyer like she had memorized every creak in the floor. Her heels made almost no sound on the runner rug. The house absorbed noise the way expensive paper absorbs ink. We passed a grand staircase and a wall of framed photographs. Victor Lang shaking hands with a senator. Victor on a sailboat, smiling at someone just out of frame. Victor holding a first edition like it was a trophy. In one photo, Vivian stood beside him in a pale dress, her smile lifted just enough for the camera. She looked younger there, almost unreal, like an idea someone had decided to buy. A piano played somewhere deeper in the house. The notes were slow, careful, the kind of melody people used when they wanted sadness to behave. Vivian led me down a hallway lined with bookcases. The spines were color-coded, arranged like a statement. I recognized titles. I had edited books. I had fought over commas in books Victor had loved because they sold well and made him look tasteful. At the end of the hall, Vivian stopped at a heavy oak door. She rested her palm against it for a moment as if listening. Then she opened it. Victor's study still smelled like him. Leather and tobacco, and the sharp bite of something expensive poured into the air. I had only been in this room a handful of times when he was alive, summoned the way you summoned a dog, never asked. The space was exactly as I remembered, except cleaner, as if grief came with staff. Books climbed the walls to the ceiling. A desk sat at the center, dark wood, polished until it reflected lamplight like water. A globe stood in the corner as if the world belonged here. On the mantel a clock ticked steadily, the sound too loud in the quiet. Vivian stepped inside and shut the door. The latch clicked. Then she turned a small brass lock from the inside. My chest tightened. Vivian. Just listen, she said. Her voice stayed soft, but her eyes did not. I needed a room that does not echo. I stood near the desk, hands at my sides, trying to look calm. The chair where Victor used to sit was still pushed back at an angle, as if he might return and continue the sentence he had been in the middle of. Vivian moved to the desk and ran her fingers along the edge, slow, precise. She did not sit. She did not touch the papers stacked neatly at one corner. I noticed her hands again. Under her right thumbnail, a thin crescent of black. You asked for help, I said. I did. With what? Vivian breathed in through her nose. The inhale looked practiced. A story, she said. The official one. I waited. She lifted her gaze to mine. They said Victor died of a heart problem. That is what the news said, I replied. That is what I let them say. Her mouth tightened. A man collapses at his desk, everyone sighs, everyone nods. Everyone moves on. It is tidy. My stomach turned. Are you saying it was not a heart attack? Vivian's eyes held mine without blinking. I am saying my husband was killed. The words landed in the room like a dropped glass, silent at first, then breaking open in my head. I stared at her, looking for a crack. A tremor, something that would tell me she was being dramatic or desperate or cruel. But she looked steady. Too steady. Vivian, I said, careful, Victor had enemies. He made them for sport, but killed. She did not flinch from the word. Yes. Why, tell me, I asked. Why now? She walked around the desk, stopping close enough that I could see the faint freckles across her nose. From the lawn, she had looked like polished marble. Up close, she looked like a person who had not slept well in a long time. Because you will not sell it, she said. I do not know what you mean. Vivian's eyes searched my face as if she was reading a manuscript for lies. Victor used to talk about you, she said. I almost laughed. He barely spoke to me unless he was angry. He spoke about you, she corrected, not to you. The clock ticked. Somewhere in the house a guest laughed too loudly and the sound faded. Vivian's voice lowered. He said you were the only one in that building who still knew the difference between hard and cruel. He said you were stubborn. He said you had a daughter and that made you careful. My throat tightened at the mention of Ava. Do not bring her into this. She is why you matter, Vivian said, and the bluntness startled me. I took a step back, the edge of the desk pressing into my hip. If you think I have some special courage, you are wrong. I am just tired. Vivian's gaze flicked down to my hands, then back up. Tired men do not look for trouble, she said. They avoid it. That is why he chose you. The sentence made my skin prickle. Chose me for what? Vivian looked past me at the bookshelves as if the answer was hidden between titles. For the truth, she said. I felt the room tilt. Not physically. Something else, the sense of standing on a floor that was not as solid as I had believed. Tell me what happened, I said. Vivian swallowed. Her throat moved. For a second, her composure slipped, and I saw fear raw and simple before she pulled it back into place. Victor did not die the way they said, she whispered. And he did not die because his heart failed him. Then why, I asked. Her eyes sharpened. Because he was going to speak. Speak to whom? Vivian's lips pressed together as if she could hold the answer in. Then she said, people who do not attend parties. A chill ran up my arms. Outside, the lawn was full of people who smiled for cameras. Inside the study felt like a confession booth. Vivian, I said, keeping my voice steady, if you are telling me there is an investigation, you should talk to the police. She gave a small, humorless laugh. The police. You do not trust them. I do not trust anyone whose career depends on not hearing the truth, she said. I searched her face again, trying to place the pieces. Who do you think did it? Vivian's jaw tightened. The scent of her perfume rose between us, clean and cool, trying too hard. I think Victor's partners did, she said, and I think one of them is still running his company. My mind jumped to Grant Kessler without permission. Grant's calm voice, his eyes that never warmed the way he had said stakes like he was naming a tool. Grant, I said before I could stop myself. Vivian's eyes flickered. Not surprise. Recognition. Acknowledgement that I had arrived at the name too quickly for someone who was supposed to be in the dark. She did not say yes. She did not need to. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I did not reach for it. The vibration felt loud. Vivian lifted a hand palm facing me, asking for patience. I could not tell you outside, she said. Not with all of them watching. Not with him watching. You invited me, I said, trying to keep the accusation out of my voice. I invited you because this is the one place where people assume you belong, Vivian replied. They do not question why the editor is here. They question why the widow is alone. The clock kept ticking. Vivian moved toward the door, then stopped, as if she could feel the party through the wood. They are waiting for me, she said. Then why lock me in here, I asked. Her eyes returned to mine. Because I needed you to hear the words without distraction, she said. And because once you hear them, you will not be able to unhear them. I felt my pulse in my throat. So what do you want from me? Vivian took a breath. I want you to help me finish what Victor started. What did he start, I asked. Her gaze slid to the desk, to a drawer I remembered Victor keeping locked. He left something, she said, and her voice softened on the last word. The lock on the door rattled suddenly. A sharp knock followed, impatient and sloppy like a drunk hand, missed the beat. Viv, a man's voice called through the wood. People are asking where you went. Vivian's shoulders stiffened. She did not look at the door. She looked at me. The fear returned quick and bright. That is Owen, she whispered. Victor's brother. Owen was outside, I said. He was drinking. He always is, Vivian replied. Her gaze held mine steady again. "Listen to me." The knock came again louder. "Vivian, come on." Vivian raised her voice, turning it warm and light, the hostess voice I had heard on the lawn. "Just a moment." Then she stepped closer to me. Close enough that I could see the faint line where her makeup ended near her jaw, close enough to notice her hands were cold. "I cannot talk here," she whispered. "Meet me later, where I asked." Her eyes flicked up toward the ceiling as if the house itself might be listening. "The garden behind the glass house," she said. "There's a stone bench by the riverside path, 11. I started to speak, but she shook her head once small and sharp. "Do not look for me," she added. "Do not ask anyone where I am going. If he asks, you got lost looking for the bathroom." "He," I said. Vivian did not answer. The omission said enough. The knock turned into a fist. Vivian. She reached up and touched my sleeve with her fingertips, just a brush of contact that felt like ink on skin. "Please," she said. Then she stepped back and moved to the door. She unlocked it. The small brass turn sounded too loud in the quiet. She opened the door as if nothing had happened. Owen stood there, face-flushed, eyes glassy. He leaned into the doorway and looked past Vivian at me. "Oh," he said, drawing the word out. "The editor." His gaze swept the room, lingering on the desk, the shelves, the clock, as if he was counting valuables. Then his eyes returned to Vivian. "There you are," he said. "You vanish and everyone thinks you are crying somewhere." Vivian smiled at him, polite and practiced. "I needed air," she said. "In your husband's cave," Owen replied and took a sip from his glass. His hand shook a little. He hated when people touched his things. Vivian's smile did not change. "I am still his wife." Owen's eyes flicked to me again. "And you," he said. "You still work for Grant." "Yes," I answered. Owen's mouth twisted like the name tasted bad. "Be careful," he said, not quite slurred, not quite sober. "Some people in this house do not like loose pages." Vivian's fingers closed gently on Owen's arm. "Come," she said, "they are waiting." Owen let her guide him away. As they moved down the hallway, he turned his head once and looked back at me. His expression was unreadable, a grin that never reached his eyes. The door to the study remained open. The party noise drifted in soft and distant like it belonged to a different building. I stood alone by Victor Lang's desk, staring at the chair pushed back at its angle, listening to the clock measure out seconds that did not feel like mine. I stayed in Victor Lang's study until my breathing matched the clock. The air felt too still, like the room had been sealed to preserve a smell. I could have shut the door and slipped away through a side corridor, vanished before anyone noticed I had ever come. Instead, I walked out with my shoulders squared, letting the hallway swallow me again. The party noise returned in layers. A bright laugh from the living room, a clink of glass from the bar. The piano kept laying down soft notes like someone smoothing a sheet over a body. In the foyer, I paused by the wall of photographs and looked again. Victor's grin in every frame looked identical. The same confidence stamped on his face like foil. In one shot, his hand rested on a young politician's shoulder, casual proprietary. In another, he stood beside Vivian at a gala, her posture perfect, her eyes slightly unfocused, as if she had stepped out of herself to survive the flash. A waiter offered a tray. I took a glass of water and felt the cold sweat against my palm. I could still hear Vivian's voice, low and steady. Killed partners. Still running his company. My phone buzzed. A work message from Grant sat on the screen, only 2 words this time: enjoy yourself. The period at the end looked like a nail. I put the phone away and moved toward the tent outside. The night had deepened, and the lawn lights made the grass shine like it had been waxed. Guests stood closer together now, the chill herding them into tight circles. The string quartet had been replaced by recorded music, something that tried to sound intimate and ended up sounding like money pretending to be warm. I spotted Owen near the bar, still drinking. He was louder now, using his hands, telling a story to a couple that nodded too much. He looked like a man who wanted to be heard and did not care if what he said was true. Grant stood near the edge of the tent with two men in suits that fit like uniforms. Their faces were smooth, uncreased by expression. They spoke to Grant with the ease of people who did not worry about being overheard. When Grant laughed, it was short and controlled, as if he was paying by the sound. Vivian had vanished into the house. People kept turning their heads looking for her, then returning to their drinks as if her absence was expected. A woman from marketing touched my arm and asked if I was all right. Her eyes flicked from my face to my empty glass and back. I told her I was fine. She told me Victor would have been pleased. The words tasted like something rehearsed. I drifted, listening without listening. Names floated past. A senator's chief of staff, a donor with a vineyard, an author who wrote about corruption for a living and joked about it with a grin. Everyone spoke like the night was a performance, like grief was a theme and not a wound. Time moved strangely. I checked my watch and felt the numbers press against my skin. 10:30, 10:36, 10:42. Each minute felt like the clock was pushing me with a fingertip between the shoulder blades. At 10:45, I stepped away from the tent and headed toward the garden path. I kept my face neutral, my pace unhurried. No one stopped me. No one cared where the editor went, as Vivian had said. I could have been looking for a restroom. I could have been taking a call. I could have been getting air. The path curved behind the house. The sound softened. The air cooled. The scent of lilies faded and was replaced by damp earth and trimmed hedges. Somewhere beyond the property, the river moved unseen, the dark water making its own quiet. The glass house came into view on my left, a structure of panes and metal ribs lit from within by low lamps. In the warmth behind the glass, tall plants rose like silhouettes. Condensation beaded along the edges, catching light in small points. I walked past it and followed the riverside path Vivian had described. The stone bench sat under an old oak half hidden by shrubbery, the kind of place designed for private conversations that did not want witnesses. I sat and waited. Crickets filled the gaps in the silence. Leaves shifted overhead. My breath fogged faintly in the cold and vanished. I listened for footsteps on gravel, for the soft sound of Vivian's heels, for any sign that she was coming. 10 minutes passed, then 15, then 20. I stood and paced a small line in front of the bench, careful not to step on the edge of the path where the gravel would announce me. I checked my watch again. 11:12. The glass house glowed behind me like an aquarium. A shadow moved inside, just a shape, crossing the light, then gone. It could have been a gardener. It could have been nothing. I stared until my eyes started to water from the cold. Footsteps sounded on the path. Gravel shifted slow and deliberate. I turned ready to see Vivian. Grant Kessler stepped out from the darkness instead, hands in his pockets as if this were his garden. His suit looked the same as it had under the tent lights, crisp and dark, unaffected by night air. His face carried a faint flush, and I caught the scent of whiskey when he came closer. "Read," he said. My jaw tightened. Grant. He glanced past me at the empty bench. Waiting for her. I was getting air, I said. Grant's mouth curved, not quite a smile. No one gets air at 11 at night unless they want something. I said nothing. He stepped closer until the oak's shadow crossed his cheek. His eyes were calm, and that made my skin prickle. "You look like someone told you a secret," he said. "I have edited enough books to recognize melodrama," I replied. Grant's gaze held mine. "Vivian does not do melodrama," he said. "She does leverage." The word landed hard. "She invited me," I said again, and hated that it sounded like a defense. Grant leaned slightly as if sharing a confidence. "She has always had a taste for men she cannot own," he said. "Victor knew that. You knew that." "I barely knew her," I said. Grant's eyes narrowed a fraction. "You noticed her. That was the part of the conversation that felt personal, and it was the part that felt most dangerous." I did not answer. Grant glanced toward the house. Lights glowed in upstairs windows. The party noise was a distant hum. "She is a widow," he said. "And you are an employee. People love a story like that. I am not here for a story, I said. You are here because she asked, Grant replied, and because you could not refuse. He paused. She thinks you are safe. The cold pressed against the back of my neck. Safe for what? Grant's gaze flicked to my jacket pocket, quick and precise. Then back to my face. Tell me what she said to you, he asked. I have no idea what you are talking about. Grant's expression did not change. She took you into Victor's study, he said. Locked the door. People noticed. I pictured the latch. The brass lock turning. My throat tightened. What she does is her business, I said. Not when she drags you into it, Grant replied. He stepped even closer, lowering his voice. The whiskey on his breath mixed with his cedar cologne, creating a smell that was almost pleasant until you remembered what it meant. Victor left messes behind, he said, and messes attract rats. Is that what I am? I asked. Grant's eyes softened slightly as if he was offering sympathy. No, he said. You are a man with a child. That makes you predictable. My hands curled into fists inside my coat. Do not talk about my daughter. Grant lifted one palm calm. I am not threatening you, he said. I am advising you. There is a difference. The wind shifted. The oak leaves rattled softly. Somewhere, a door shut in the distance. Go home, Grant said. Go back to your small apartment. Check your daughter's forehead for fever. Sign her homework folder. Do the things that make your life feel real. Forget whatever Vivian Lang tells you. I held his gaze. And if she told me Victor was killed, the words slipped out before I could stop them. My own voice sounded too loud in the dark. Grant's eyes did not widen. He did not flinch. He looked at me as if I'd confirmed a detail in a report. She said that he replied quietly. A chill went through me that had nothing to do with the cold. It is grief, Grant continued. Grief makes people reach for explanations they can live with. Vivian needs someone to hold the weight for her, and you think that should not be me, I said. I think you are not built for it, Grant answered. Victor's world is full of people who smile while they sharpen knives. You will bleed and not understand why. My heartbeat moved into my ears. Why are you out here, I asked. Why do you care? Grant's gaze shifted past my shoulder again toward the glass house, toward the house, toward the lawn where music still played. Because I do not enjoy chaos, he said. And Vivian creates chaos when she cannot get what she wants. What does she want? I asked. Grant's eyes returned to mine. She wants absolution, he said. And she wants a witness. He took one step back, restoring polite distance. The conversation had not been loud, but it felt like the dark itself had been listening. Listen carefully, Grant said. You saw nothing in that study. You heard nothing. You have nothing. If Vivian tries to hand you anything you refuse, if she asks for help, you tell her to call her lawyer. If she cries, you let her cry on someone else's shoulder. I stood still, letting his words hit and pass. Grant's smile returned clean and corporate. Go home, he repeated. You are not the hero in this. Then he turned and walked away along the path, shoes silent on gravel, as if the ground did not dare to argue. I waited by the bench long after he left, watching the dark between the hedges, listening for Vivian's footsteps. None came. At 11:40 I gave up and headed back toward the house. The party had thinned. The tent lights looked harsher now. The laughter had lost its shine. People said their goodbyes in a slower, sloppier way, the way they did after too much alcohol and too much pretending. Inside, I scanned the foyer and the living room and the staircase. No Vivian. No sign of her white dress, no flash of silver hair. I started toward the front door. A waiter intercepted me near the coat rack, young nervous eyes darting. He held out a folded note. Mrs. Lang asked me to give this to you, he said, barely above a whisper. My fingers closed around the paper. The stock felt the same as the invitation, thick and cool. The handwriting was the same, pressed hard. Not safe to talk here. Come to the glass house by the boathouse tomorrow at 2:00 p.m. Trust no one. Vivian. I folded the note once then again and slid it into my wallet behind my driver's license as if paper could be hidden from people who lived on secrets. Outside the driveway, lights guided me back toward the gate. My rideshare arrived and pulled up headlights washing over the stone steps. I got into the back seat and looked once at the house. An upstairs window glowed faintly. A figure stood behind the glass for a moment, still and pale against the light. I could not see her face, only the outline of her hair and shoulders. A hand lifted, not quite a wave, not quite a signal. Then the curtain shifted, and the light became only light again. The car smelled like stale pine air freshener and the driver's cologne. Streetlights slid across the window in slow bands. My wallet felt heavier than it should, as if the folded note had turned to metal in my pocket. The driver glanced at me in the mirror. "You all right back there?" "Long night," I said. He nodded, like that explained everything. The city came back in pieces. Bridges. Dark water. A row of quiet townhouses with lights still on behind curtains. When we reached my building, I paid and stepped out into air that had gone colder, sharper. The stairwell smelled like old carpet and someone's dinner. Mrs. Jennings was asleep on my couch with a throw blanket tucked under her chin. The television murmured low, a late-night host laughing at something that was not funny enough to wake her. I turned it off, and the apartment fell into a hush that made every small sound feel loud. "Everything okay?" she asked, eyes half open. "Yeah," I said. "Thank you for staying." She pushed herself upright, hair flattened on one side. "You look like you saw a ghost." "I saw a lot of people," I said. "You can go back to bed." Mrs. Jennings shuffled to the door, slippers whispering over the floor. She paused with her hand on the knob and looked back at me the way older women do when they are deciding whether to ask a question that might make you lie. "If somebody bothers you," she said, "you tell me." "I will," I replied. She left. Her door clicked shut next door. The building settled again. I checked on Ava. She slept on her side, one arm thrown over her stuffed rabbit hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. Her nightlight cast a soft circle on the wall. For a moment I stood there and listened to her breathing, steady and small, the sound that makes everything else in life feel optional. I went back to the kitchen table where the invitation still lay under the magnet. Ava's paper crane sat beside it, wings angled up as if bracing itself. I took my wallet out, slid the note free, and unfolded it. "Not safe to talk here. Come to the glass house by the boathouse tomorrow at 2:00 p.m. Trust no one. Vivian." Her handwriting pressed into the paper hard enough to shadow through to the back. The last line looked darker, as if the ink had pooled when she wrote it. "Trust no one." Grant's voice came back to me in the garden. "You have nothing. You heard nothing." I folded the note and set it beside the crane. The silver on the invitation caught the kitchen light. It looked pretty. It looked harmless. It looked like a lie. I slept in short stretches and dreamed of ticking clocks. When I woke, the light through the blinds made stripes across the floor. Ava's alarm went off in the next room, a chirping sound she insisted was cheerful. She padded into the kitchen in Sock's eyes still half closed. "You came back," she said, like she was checking a box. "I told you I would," I replied. She poured cereal into a bowl and looked at the invitation. "Are you going again?" I hesitated. Ava watched my face, patient and too perceptive. "I have to go out for a bit today," I said, "after lunch. Work. Something like that." She stirred her cereal and listened to the spoon scrape the bowl. "Is it because of that lady?" "Vivian," I said. Ava nodded once. She looked sad at the funeral. She looked... I searched for the right word and found none. She looked alone. Ava took a bite, chewed, swallowed. "Are you going to their house again?" "Yes." She sat back. "Are you wearing the sad suit?" "No." Ava glanced at the paper crane, then at me. "Bring this," she said, and pushed it across the table. I picked it up. The folds were crisp. A corner pressed into my fingertip, almost a cut. "All right," I said. Ava nodded satisfied and went back to her cereal. I texted my sister Nora after I dropped Ava at school. Nora answered on the second ring. "Mason," she said, "you sound tired." "I need a favor," I replied. She sighed, already bracing. "If this is about that job, I'm going to tell you again to quit." "It is not about the job," I said. "I need you to pick Ava up today and keep her with you until dinner." Nora went quiet. "Why?" "Please," I said. The pause on the line stretched. Nora's voice came back lower. "Did something happen last night?" "I will explain," I said. "Not on the phone." "Fine," she replied. "I will pick her up. Where are you going?" I looked at the folded note on the passenger seat beside me. "Virginia," I said. "You are not giving me much," Nora said. "I know." She exhaled sharp. "If you are doing something stupid, Mason, at least do not do it alone." "I will call you later," I said. "You will?" she answered like it was not a request. I drove to my office first and sat in the car for a minute without getting out. The building rose clean and reflective glass and steel pretending it was neutral. Inside were people who smiled when they lied. I did not want to go in. I wanted to keep moving to keep time from catching up. My phone buzzed. Grant again. A text with no greeting. "Busy today." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Then I typed a reply with my thumbs stiff. "Out with my daughter. Will be available later." I watched the message send. Then I drove away. At 1:45, I turned off the main road and followed the winding lane toward the Lang estate. Trees arched overhead. The sky was pale, the kind of winter light that makes everything look exposed. The gate recognized my car this time without the intercom. It opened too smoothly. Inside, the grounds were emptier than the night before. No tents, no music. The lawn looked untouched, as if the party had been a dream staged for cameras. Workers moved at a distance, collecting folding chairs, loading equipment into a truck. No one looked up when I passed. I followed the drive around the side of the house to a narrower service road, the route Vivian's note had implied. The road dipped toward the river. The air changed again, cooler damp. I caught the faint smell of water and decaying leaves. The glass house appeared first, set back among trees. In daylight, it looked less romantic and more fragile. Metal ribs held up the panes. Inside, plants crowded near the windows, thick green leaves pressed against glass fogged with condensation. A few droplets slid down slowly, leaving clear trails like tears that had chosen a path. Beyond it, closer to the river, sat the boathouse. It was built like a small guest cottage with wide windows facing the water and a short dock that jutted out into the slow-moving Potomac. A rowboat was tied to a cleat rocking gently. I parked where the service road widened and shut off the engine. For a moment, I sat with my hands on the wheel. The quiet felt too deliberate. I checked my phone. No signal bars moved. The screen read 1:58. I stepped out and walked toward the glass house first. The door was locked. I tried the handle once, then again, and felt it refuse. I could see a narrow path behind it, leading toward the boathouse, half hidden by bare shrubs and tall grasses that bent toward the river. I followed the path. The boathouse door stood slightly ajar. My pulse kicked. I stopped listening. No voices, no footsteps. Only the river, and somewhere farther off a bird calling once and then falling silent. "Vivian," I said, keeping my voice low. No answer. I pushed the door open. Inside, the air was warmer. The space was set up like a sitting room, not storage. A sofa faced the windows. A small table held a bowl of oranges. A kitchenette sat against one wall with a kettle and 2 mugs on a tray. Someone had tried to make it feel normal here. On the coffee table, centered like a gift, sat a thick manila envelope with my name written on it in black ink. Mason Reed. Beside it lay a leather-bound journal, dark brown edges worn. A fountain pen rested on top, its cap off. The nib gleamed. I stepped closer and did not touch anything for a second. The room felt staged. The oranges looked too perfect. The mugs looked unused. The envelope looked like a trap. I reached for it anyway. The paper was rough under my fingers, the flap sealed, but not with glue. It had been tucked closed as if whoever prepared it wanted it opened quickly. Inside was a stack of pages bound with a black clip. The title page read, Silver Leaf. Confessions of a Kingmaker. Victor Lang. I flipped to a page near the middle without thinking. Names leapt out in bold casual type. Dates, amounts, references to meetings in back rooms and donations with clean labels that hid dirty origins. A sentence mentioned a committee chair. Another referenced a regulatory vote. Another described a favor traded for silence. My mouth went dry. I set the manuscript down and picked up the journal. The leather felt warm as if it had been held recently. I opened it to the first page. Victor's handwriting was tight, slanted, impatient. The ink looked slightly faded in places, darker in others where the pen had pressed harder. It was not a man writing for an audience. It was a man writing to keep himself from coming apart. I read a paragraph and felt my skin tighten. He wrote about money moving through foundations, about promises made in offices that smelled like aftershave and panic, about knowing too much and pretending that was the same as control. I turned the page. A floorboard creaked. I froze. The sound came again, softer, like a foot shifting weight outside the room. I moved to the window and looked through the glass. A dark vehicle rolled along the service road toward the boathouse. Not a family sedan. Not a work truck. A black sport utility vehicle, clean and unmarked, moving with slow purpose. It stopped near my car. 2 men stepped out. They wore dark suits that fit too well to be for court. One scanned the area without turning his head much. The other looked at the boathouse windows, then at the glass house, then at the river. The first man reached inside his jacket and adjusted something. The motion was small, practiced. My stomach dropped. I backed away from the window and looked around. The front door was still open, but stepping out would put me in their line of sight. There was a smaller door at the back, half hidden behind a curtain. I crossed the room quietly, my shoes barely whispering against the wood. The back door opened to a narrow path along the river, shielded by tall grasses and drooping branches from a stand of willows. The water beyond was dark green, slow and different. I grabbed the manuscript and the journal. The stack of pages felt heavier than paper should. The journal fit into my palm like a stone. The front door of the boathouse creaked. A voice carried in low and clipped. Check the whole place. Another voice answered, annoyed. She said he would be here. She. My throat tightened. I slipped out the back door and pulled it shut with 2 fingers careful. My heart hammered so hard it felt like it would make noise. I crouched and moved along the river path, keeping low behind the grasses. The willows dipped like curtains, their thin branches brushing my hair and cheeks with cold damp. Behind me, the front door opened wider. Footsteps crossed the floor inside. A drawer slid. A cabinet door thumped shut. The kettle on the counter rattled slightly as if disturbed. I kept moving. The path curved toward the service road where my car sat. Between the willows, I could see the black vehicle, the men's silhouettes shifting as they moved in and out of the boathouse doorway. I timed my steps with the river breeze moving when the branches swayed, stopping when the world went still. When I reached my car, I did not run. Running makes you obvious. Running makes you stupid. I opened the driver door, slowly slid in, and laid the manuscript and journal on the passenger seat. My fingers had ink on them now, a gray smudge from the journal's page edges. I rubbed it with my thumb, and it only spread thinner, like a stain that refused to admit it was there. I started the engine. The sound seemed loud enough to crack glass. In my rearview mirror, one of the men stepped out of the boathouse and turned his head toward the service road. His eyes found my car. Even from that distance, I felt the moment of recognition like a hand closing around my wrist. I put the car in drive and rolled forward, steady as if I belonged here. The tires whispered over gravel. In the mirror, the man lifted a hand toward his jacket again, and the other figure moved to follow. I drove like the road was watching me. Past the last curve of the service road, the trees thinned and the estate vanished behind a rise. I kept my speed steady, hands fixed at 10 and 2, face neutral, even though my pulse hammered against my throat. In the mirror, I saw only ordinary traffic and winter light. Still, my body stayed braced, waiting for the black SUV to appear like a bad thought you could not swallow. The manuscript and journal lay inside my backpack on the passenger seat. Paper should not feel dangerous, yet every time the bag shifted with a turn, it felt like something alive moving beside me. Not home, I told myself. Not the office. I took the bridge toward Arlington and headed for a public library tucked between a grocery store and a row of cafes. People came and went all day. Cameras watched the doors. If anyone wanted to grab me, they would have to do it in front of witnesses who did not care about publishing dynasties. I parked between a minivan and a dented sedan, then sat for a moment with the engine off, listening. A cart clattered in the grocery lot. A bus sighed at the curb. Nothing else. Inside, the library smelled like dust and carpet cleaner. Lights hummed overhead. A woman at the front desk looked up and smiled with the calm of someone who believed trouble belonged outside. I chose a table near the back where I could see the entrance and the parking lot through tall windows. Then I unzipped the backpack and pulled out the manuscript. Silver Leaf. Confessions of a Kingmaker. Victor Lang. The title page was clean, formatted like a book ready to print. The first paragraph sounded like the Victor I remembered from meetings. Smooth, persuasive, always turning a sentence into a lever. He wrote about the power of stories, about how publishing shaped culture, about responsibility. Then, without changing his tone, he wrote about money like it was weather. Names, dates, amounts. A foundation with a noble name that existed to wash bad cash into good receipts. A lunch with a senator described in 3 crisp lines, as if the cost of buying influence was no more complicated than ordering steak. A note about a regulator who liked rare bourbon. Victor wrote the way he talked, confident that precision was protection. My stomach tightened until my jaw ached. I pulled out the leather journal. The handwriting was smaller, tighter, as if Victor had been trying to keep the ink from spilling the truth. The entries were not polished. They were impatient, sometimes angry, sometimes exhausted. In those pages, Victor did not sound like a kingmaker. He sounded like a man trapped inside his own machine. He wrote about calls that ended in silence, about unfamiliar cars outside his building, about Vivian not with romance, not with cruelty, but with a hard tenderness that felt like regret he did not know how to name. And he wrote about Grant Kessler. Grant's name appeared again and again, with the flat inevitability of a bill you could not avoid. Victor described him as brilliant and disciplined, a man who never wasted a word, a man who treated loyalty like a tool. Victor wrote that Grant had made their operation cleaner, quieter, safer. For them. I read until my eyes burned and the library's normal sounds faded into a distant buzz. Keys clicked. Pages turned. Somewhere a child giggled and was shushed. The world kept its ordinary rhythm while my hands held evidence that could crack it open. Near the back of the journal, the tone changed. The lines pressed deeper into the paper. The ink looked darker, as if the pen had hesitated, then stabbed. Vivian thinks a book will save me, Victor had written. She thinks the public protects confessions. They do not. They erase. I swallowed and kept reading. If anything happens to me, the pages go to Mason Reed. He is the only one who cannot be bought. He has nothing to gain and everything to lose. My name sat there like a finger pointed at my chest. I reached into my coat pocket and found Ava's paper crane, its wings slightly crushed from the drive. The folds were still sharp, still determined. I set it on the table beside the journal, white paper against dark leather. A child's patience next to a grown man's confession. Ava had said it was so I would come back. I kept my eyes on the crane for a moment, letting my breathing slow. The quiet of the library pressed around me, not comforting, just indifferent. Behind me, a printer whirred and spat out pages for someone's homework. A librarian walked past with a cartwheel squeaking once, then settling into silence, Ordinary paper for ordinary lives. I looked down at Victor's words again. My name. The sentence about having everything to lose. It felt less like a compliment and more like a set of hands pushing me toward a ledge. I thought about walking to the front desk and asking them to call the police. The idea rose, then died. If the wrong person picked up the phone, the men in suits would not need to search. They would simply arrive. I stared at it until the letters stopped looking real. Victor had not trusted me the way a man trusts a friend. He had picked me the way you pick the lightest thing to carry a load, hoping it breaks somewhere far from you. My phone vibrated on the table. Unknown number. Are you safe? I looked up at the entrance. No suits, no black SUV. Just a teenager with headphones and a woman balancing a tote bag and a coffee. My fingers hovered over the screen. Another text arrived. I saw you leave. I'm sorry. It was not supposed to happen, V. The initial made my skin prickle. Vivian. I typed, deleted, then typed again. I have the manuscript and the journal. Who were those men? The reply came fast. Victor's partners. They know he kept records. Do not trust Grant. Do not go home. Then another line. Meet me at Union Station at 7. I checked the time, 4:41. The red second hand on the wall clock swept forward as if it had never heard of panic. I slid the journal back into the backpack and set the manuscript on top. My hands were smudged with ink from the page edges gray and stubborn. I rubbed at it with my thumb. It spread thinner, a stain that refused to admit it was there. My phone rang. Nora. I answered on the first ring, Nora. Her voice came tight-clipped. There is a man at my door. Cold went through me. Is Ava with you? Yes, she said. She heard him and ran to her room. He says he is from your office. Do not open the door, I said. I did not. Nora snapped. Then her tone dropped. Mason, who is this? I pictured the two men at the boathouse, one hand disappearing into a jacket like it belonged there. I pictured Grant's calm face in the garden, the way he said, stakes like a fact. Listen, I said, take Ava and go to Mom's, right now. Nora went silent for a beat, then breathed out. He is still standing there. Use the back stairs, I said. Do not talk to him. Do not tell anyone where you're going. Mason, she said, and the fear finally showed itself. Where are you? At a library, I said. Arlington. Do not go home, Nora said. The words came out like an order she had been waiting to give. I will not, I replied. A muffled sound came through the phone like the doorbell pressed again. I am leaving, Nora whispered. Call me when you are in the car, I said. She hung up. I sat, very still, forcing my face into neutrality, as a man walked past my table, carrying a stack of books. My heartbeat felt too loud for a library. I kept my eyes on the entrance until they started to sting. Ava had been safe in my head, a warm picture that steadied me. Now, she was a target for men who treated threats like paperwork. I zipped my backpack and slid the strap over my shoulder. I did not linger. I did not let myself debate. Debate was how you stayed still long enough to be caught. Outside, the sidewalk was busy with afternoon life. A couple argued softly over a parking receipt. Someone laughed into a phone. A woman pushed a stroller, eyes half on the child, half on the traffic. I reached my car, got in, and locked the doors. I did not check messages until I was moving. At the first red light, my phone buzzed. Nora. In the car, Ava is with me, heading to Mom's now. Relief hit so hard my hands loosened on the wheel. I forced myself to breathe through it, slow, controlled. Another buzz. Vivian. Are you coming? I looked at the road ahead, the flow of cars, the ordinary world going about its business. The backpack sat on the passenger seat, heavy with paper that could ruin powerful men. I typed with my thumb. Yes. I sent it, then turned the phone face down. The light changed. I drove towards the city, keeping my speed steady, keeping my eyes forward, the ink on my fingers a faint reminder that some stains do not wash out. The closer I got to the city, the more the traffic felt choreographed. red lights holding rows of cars in place, green lights releasing them like a signal. I kept my eyes moving, checking mirrors, watching the gaps between bumpers, watching the faces in nearby vehicles. When I reached the garage near Union Station, I took a ticket and drove down a level, then another, choosing a spot that gave me a clear line to the stairwell. The concrete smelled of exhaust and damp. My backpack strap cut into my shoulder as I climbed. Upstairs, the station hit me all at once. Warm air, coffee, pretzels, the sharp bite of disinfectant on polished stone. Footsteps echoed off marble. Rolling suitcases clicked over seams in the floor. The main hall opened wide, bright, and too public to feel safe. A clock hung high above the concourse, black hands slicing through the minutes with a calm that felt insulting. 48. I stood near a pillar and let the crowd flow around me. People moved with purpose. Commuters with earbuds and tired eyes. Tourists craning their necks, phones lifted. A man in a navy coat argued softly into a headset. A woman in heels held a paper bag and walked like she owned the air. I scanned faces for Vivian. Pale hair, white coat, the kind of stillness that would not match the bustle. I looked for her the way you look for a landmark in fog. Nothing. I moved toward the information board and stopped as if I cared about train times. My phone stayed in my pocket. I watched reflections in the glass. I watched the edges of the crowd. I watched for men who did not look lost. At 6:55, I walked to a cafe kiosk and ordered a black coffee I did not want. The barista slid the cup toward me with a bored smile. The lid clicked on. The cup was too hot in my hand. I turned and almost collided with a man in a suit. He apologized quickly and kept walking without looking back. My shoulders tensed anyway. I checked my backpack, still zipped, still heavy, still there. I picked a spot with a view of the main entrance and the concourse. A bench near a trash can, not glamorous, not comfortable, not a place anyone would choose for a romantic meeting. I sat coffee between my hands, the heat bleeding into my palms. The clock crept closer to 7 years. At 7:02, I saw Owen Lang. He did not look like the man from the party. The whiskey shine was gone from his eyes. His face was paler, his jaw unshaven. He wore the same coat, but it hung on him like he had lost weight overnight. He stood near the ticket machine, shoulders tight, scanning the hall without moving his head much. When his gaze found me, he did not hesitate. He walked straight over steps, quick but controlled, as if he was trying not to draw attention. "She is not coming," he said the moment he reached me. The words hit harder than they should have. "Where is she?" Owen glanced around, eyes flicking to the crowd, then back to me. "Not here," he said, "not anywhere you can reach by walking." My grip tightened on the coffee cup until the lid creaked. "Owen, tell me." He swallowed. His throat worked like he was forcing down something bitter. "They took her," he said. "The same people who took Victor." The station noise kept going. A train announcement echoed. A baby cried and was soothed. Someone laughed. Owen's words sat in the middle of all that normal life like a stain. Who, I asked. Owen's mouth twitched, humorless. "Partners," he said. "Men with polished shoes and quiet voices. Men who do not raise their hands in public." My mind jumped to the boathouse. 2 men, black SUV, one hand inside a jacket, and Vivian's message, "I am sorry, it was not supposed to happen." "Why are you telling me?" I said. Owen's eyes held mine. "Because she told me to," he replied. I stood slowly, coffee still in hand. "She texted you." Owen reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen showed a message thread. Vivian's name at the top. Her last message sat there in plain words. "Owen, they are here. Find Reed. Trust only him." I stared at it until my eyes burned. Then I looked up. Owen's voice dropped. "She sent that before they got her phone," he said. "Or before she lost the chance to use it." A pulse beat behind my eyes. "When?" "This afternoon," Owen replied, "right after you ran." My jaw tightened. I did not run to leave her. "I know," Owen said quickly, then hesitated. "Or I want to know. It is hard to know anything right now. We stood near the bench like two men waiting for a train, nothing in our posture, screaming, danger. That was the point. The danger here was quiet. It wore good fabric. What do they want? I asked. Owen's eyes flicked to my backpack. The movement was small but precise. That he said. I did not confirm. I did not deny. Owen exhaled. Victor wrote a book, he said. He also built a file. He kept proof. Names, payments, favors. The book was the story. The proof was the spine. I felt my throat tighten. You knew. I helped, Owen admitted. He rubbed a hand over his face. Not because I wanted to. Because he asked. Because I was the brother who always stood in the corner and listened. My coffee had cooled enough to drink. I took a sip anyway. It tasted burnt and thin. Then, why did you let him die? I asked, and hated the sharpness in my voice but could not stop it. Owen's eyes flashed. Do you think I had bodyguards? He snapped softly. Do you think I had power? Victor had power. He still ended up dead. The words shut me up. Owen leaned closer, keeping his voice low. Victor was not killed for writing, he said. He was killed because he decided to speak. To whom I asked. Owen's gaze flicked toward a pair of transit police walking past. People you do not invite to a party, he said. Federal investigators. He was going to testify. He was going to name Grant. The name landed. It fit too easily. Grant's calm voice in the garden. His controlled smile. The way he asked what Vivian said without raising his voice. The way he said control keeps people safe. Owen watched my face and nodded once like he had just seen me accept something I did not want. You have proof, I said. Owen's hand went into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small recorder, black and plain, the kind of device you could palm and forget until it mattered. He held it like it was fragile. This is one piece, he said. He pressed a button. A hiss, then Victor's voice, crisp and unmistakable, filled the space between us. Grant Kessler has coordinated our political funding operation since 2011, Victor said. He arranged payments through the Lang Foundation and 3 partner nonprofits. He negotiated legislative favors with Senator Caldwell and Governor Raines. He holds the receipts and he holds the threats. Owen stopped the playback and slipped the recorder back into his pocket. My skin prickled. The station felt louder all at once. Every laugh sounded sharper. Every footstep sounded closer. You recorded this, I said. Victor did, Owen replied. More than once. He recorded meetings, calls little monologues to himself. He used to say that paper is easy to burn. Sound is harder to erase once it leaves your hands. I thought of the manuscript and journal in my backpack. Ink and paper. Evidence you could hold. Evidence you could steal. Owen's eyes stayed fixed on mine. I sent copies, he said. To whom I asked. Owen's lips pressed together. Newsrooms, he replied. People who like explosions they can print. I gave them a condition. If they do not hear from me by 9:15 tonight, they publish. I looked up at the clock, 7:11. The numbers did not change their expression. You set a timer, I said. Owen nodded once tight. A dead man's switch, he said. It keeps us alive for now. For now, I repeated. Owen's jaw clenched. It gives us a window, he said. It also makes us targets. The words should have made me step back. Instead, they made my grip on the backpack strap tighten. I pictured Ava in Nora's car. I pictured my mother's kitchen. I pictured the paper crane on my table. I pictured a man in a suit showing up at Nora's door and making Ava hide. I did not have the luxury of pretending this was someone else's story. Where is Vivian? I asked. Owen's gaze dropped, then lifted. Georgetown, he said. Victor kept a townhouse there for business. Real business. People come and go without leaving records. The kind of place where men in suits do not stand outside and knock. My stomach turned. Why would they take her there? Owen's voice hardened. Because she is inconvenient, he said. Because she owns shares and signatures. Because she knew too much and stayed alive too long. I heard Vivian's voice in the study. He left something. Help me finish what Victor started. You believe she is alive, I said. Owen nodded, but his eyes did not promise anything. I believe they need her alive, he replied. At least until they get what they want. My mind raced through the obvious options. Call the police. Go to the FBI. Walk into an office with the manuscript and say, "Help me." Each option cracked the moment you touched it. Vivian had said the police were not safe. Victor had written about erasing. Owen looked like a man who had already tested his faith and found it empty. We go to the police, I said anyway, because saying it felt like trying to grab a railing. Owen's laugh was short, bitter. You think the people Victor paid did not pay others, he said. You think you can walk into a precinct and announce a scandal without someone calling Grant. I thought about the man at Nora's door, about the speed with which danger traveled. I lowered my voice, then what I asked. Owen's eyes searched my face the way Vivian had, like he was deciding if I would fold. You have the pages, he said. You have the journal. They will chase you until they hold it, or until they bury it. Vivian is the only reason they are not already killing each other to find you. I felt a cold tightness in my chest. You are making me the reason she is in danger. Owen's expression flinched quick. No, he said. Victor made you the fallback. Vivian tried to turn you into the answer. I looked around the station again. A man in a gray coat leaned against a wall, eyes down, scrolling his phone. A woman with a rolling suitcase argued with a kiosk attendant. A group of teenagers moved in a pack, loud and careless. Everyone living their ordinary minutes. The clock kept moving. I reached into my pocket and touched the paper crane Ava had given me. The folds pressed into my fingertips. I held it for a second, then let go. I do not trust you, I said to Owen, honest. Owen nodded. Good, he replied. Trust makes you slow. I studied him. The haggard face. The trembling hand when he had played the recorder. The way he had not tried to charm me. He looked like a man who had finally stepped out of a shadow and found the light did not feel warm. I have one rule, I said. My daughter stays out of this. Owen's eyes softened. Mine died when I was a kid, he said quietly. If I had a rule like that, I would hold it like a weapon. I did not know what to do with that, so I nodded once. Owen's phone buzzed. He glanced down, then back up. They will be watching the station, he said. Not uniformed, not obvious. We need to move. I kept my voice low. Where? Owen stepped slightly to the side, letting a couple pass between us, and spoke as if we were discussing train platforms. We do not walk out together, he said. We do not look at each other. We leave on different doors and meet across the street. I hesitated. The idea of splitting up felt wrong. It also felt necessary. Fine, I said. Owen's gaze flicked to my backpack again. Keep it close, he said. It is already close, I replied. I turned away first and moved into the crowd, letting my pace match the flow. The station lights made everything look clean. The marble floors reflected shoes and shadows. The clock above kept counting in full view of everyone indifferent to who was running out of time. At the exit, cold air slapped my face. Car horns and city noise rushed in. I stepped onto the sidewalk and crossed with the crowd at the light eyes, forward shoulders, steady backpack tight against my side. On the far corner, a coffee shop glowed through its windows. People sat inside with laptops and paper cups, unaware of anything beyond their own screens. I pushed through the door and chose a table near the front facing the street. Through the glass, I watched the station entrance and waited for Owen to appear. The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and damp wool. The heat inside fogged the windows, turning the street into a smeared painting of headlights and pedestrians. I chose a table near the glass, set my backpack on the chair beside me, and wrapped both hands around a cup I did not plan to drink. Across the street, Union Station kept swallowing people and spitting them back out. The doors opened, the doors closed. A river of commuters kept flowing like nothing could interrupt it. I watched the entrance until my eyes started to sting. Every time a man in a dark coat stepped out, my shoulders tightened. Every time a black car rolled past, my pulse jumped, then steadied again. Owen appeared at 7:24. He came out of the station alone, head down, moving with the stiff purpose of someone trying not to look like he was running. He crossed at the light with the crowd and reached the corner without turning his head. Only when he stepped through the coffee shop door did his gaze find mine. He walked straight to my table and sat with his back to the wall. He looked colder now, as if the air outside had crawled into his bones. "You saw anyone follow me?" he asked. "No," I said. Owen nodded once, then stared at the street through the window, eyes scanning reflected shapes. His hands shook faintly as he reached for the napkin holder and pulled out a napkin he did not need folding and refolding it. "You have it," he said, not a question. I kept my voice low. "Yes." Owen's eyes flicked to the backpack and away. "Do not open it here," he murmured. "I was not going to," I replied. A barista called out a name. Someone laughed too loudly at a table behind us. A spoon clinked against ceramic. Ordinary noises, close and loud, forcing us to pretend we were just two men killing time. Owen leaned forward slightly. "Georgetown," he said. Victor kept the place under a company name. It is narrow, 4 floors. Front door faces the street. Backside has a service lane and a small courtyard. "You have been there," I said. Owen's mouth tightened. "Too many times." I watched the traffic, then looked at him again. "How do you know Vivian is there?" I asked. Owen's gaze drifted down to his phone. "I got one message before her number went dead," he said. One line. Not even a full sentence. He unlocked the screen and held it where I could see, without leaning too close. They moved me. Georgetown. I stared at the words. My throat tightened. "How long ago?" I asked. "An hour," he said. I thought of Vivian in Victor's study, the way her voice had gone steady when she said killed. She had known the shape of danger and still stepped into it. Owen tucked the phone away. "They will want the pages," he said. "They will want her signature. They will want both." For what I asked. Owen's jaw flexed. "Ownership," he said. "Control." Victor built a lot of clean-looking things on top of dirty money. When he died, the money did not stop. It just needed a new hand on the wheel. My skin prickled. "Grant," I said. Owen's eyes held mine. "Grant is the wheel," he replied. I shifted in my seat, feeling the backpack strap against my palm. "You said you sent copies," I said. "If the newsroom's published, does that not end it?" Owen's expression went flat. "It ends the secret," he said. "It does not end the people who made it." A couple at the next table stood to leave. Their coats brushed Owen's chair. He did not move. His eyes stayed fixed on the window alert, sharp. "What do you actually want from me?" I asked. Owen's lips pressed together, then released. "Victor chose you because you would not sell it," he said. "Vivian chose you because she thought you would not leave her." My stomach tightened at the word leave. I looked down at the table and saw a dark smudge on my thumb from the journal's pages. Ink again, stubborn as a bruise. Owen's voice lowered. "You want to go home," he said. "I understand that. I want to go home too, except I do not have one. But if you walk away now, they will still come for you. They already went to your sister's door." I felt a heat behind my eyes that was not anger, not exactly, more like panic looking for a place to land. I kept my voice controlled. "Ava is safe," I said. "For tonight," Owen replied. I reached into my coat pocket and touched the paper crane. The folds were slightly crushed, but the shape held. Ava's small hands had made it. Patient hands. Hands that believed paper could become a bird if you kept working at it. I drew a slow breath. "Where is the townhouse?" I asked. Owen gave me the address without looking down, as if the numbers were branded into him. I repeated it silently until it stuck. We finished our coffees without drinking them. We left cash on the table and walked out separately. Owen first, then me, a minute later. The air outside was colder. The sky a dark lid pressing down over the streetlights. We did not ride together. We did not look like a pair. We moved toward Georgetown like two people headed to different dinners. I parked 2 blocks away from the address Owen had given me, far enough to avoid attention, close enough to walk without being obvious. Owen's car was already there when I arrived, tucked into a tight space under a bare tree. He leaned against the trunk with his hands in his pockets, watching the sidewalk like a man waiting for someone to break a rule. I joined him, without greeting, standing a few feet away, as if we were strangers sharing a patch of night. "Any sign?" I asked. Owen nodded toward the street. "2 men in a sedan," he said. "They have been there since I got here. They do not move much. They do not smoke. They do not scroll. They just watch." I followed his gaze. A dark sedan sat at the curb with its engine idling, lights off. 2 silhouettes inside faces lit only when a passing car threw a brief flash across the windshield. "That is security," Owen said, "not the uniform kind." My pulse slowed into something harder, more focused. And inside I asked. Grant Owen replied. "At least 2 more men. He will not be alone." The townhouse was a narrow brick building wedged between 2 larger homes. Its front steps were clean. The door was glossy black. A small light burned above the entrance, too warm, too polite. From across the street, it looked like any expensive home where nothing bad ever happened. Owen's voice dropped. "They use the top floors as office space," he said. "Meetings, storage, transactions that stay off paper. The back has a service lane, a small courtyard, a kitchen entrance." I pictured the boathouse the way it had been staged, like a comfortable lie. Oranges in a bowl, 2 mugs, a trap that looked like hospitality. I kept my backpack strapped tight in my hand. "Why not call whoever you sent the recordings to?" I asked. "Why not call the federal people Victor was going to testify to?" Owen's eyes flicked toward the sedan, then back to me. "You think those calls do not get routed," he said. "You think Grant does not have someone inside every pipeline. Victor was going to testify because he had a schedule and protection. We have neither." My jaw tightened. "So we do this ourselves?" Owen did not answer that like it was bravado. He answered like it was a fact that tasted bad. "We need her out," he said. "And the pages," I added. Owen's eyes stayed on the townhouse. "If they get the journal, they can hunt the weak points," he said. "They can cut deals before the story hits. They can decide which names burn and which names walk away clean." The clock in Union Station flashed in my head, the black hands moving without mercy. I checked my phone. 8? Epatine. Owen glanced at my screen without asking. His throat bobbed. 9:15, he said. The time hung between us like a wire. I looked at him. "You said you have a dead man switch." "Yes, Owen Pye." "Ace. Stimpesheim. Then you are the only one who can stop it." Owen nodded once. "Which is why they will try to stop me first." The words landed. I understood what he was saying without him spelling it out. I watched the townhouse again. A curtain shifted on a second-floor window, a brief ripple, then stillness. Owen rubbed his thumb against his fingertips, nervous, then steadied himself. "If I walk up to the front door," he said quietly, "they will focus on me. They think I am Victor's brother who cannot shut up. They think I have the pages." I did not like the way his voice went calm as he said it. I did not like how practiced it sounded. "And I go around back," I said. Owen glanced at me. "You are not trained," he said. "I am a father," I replied. He stared for a second, then nodded once as if he understood that kind of stubbornness. "If you go around back," he said, "do not fight. Do not be brave. Get eyes. Get a door. Get her if you can. If you cannot get something that tells us where she is or who else is involved." His words were careful. He was trying to keep me alive with language. I touched the paper crane in my pocket again. It felt ridiculous to carry it into something like this. It also felt like the only honest thing I had. Owen slipped his hand into his coat pocket and checked the recorder without pulling it out. He did not say it, but I could see the thought in his face. If this goes wrong, at least the timer keeps moving. We waited for a moment when the sidewalk cleared and the sedan's attention drifted. The street was not empty, but it was quieter now, the dinner crowd replaced by late walkers and rideshare cars. Owen pushed off the tree. "I am going," he said. I nodded. He crossed the street at a normal pace, shoulders slightly slumped, the posture of a man returning to a place that had ruined him. At the front steps, he paused and pulled out his phone, holding it up like he was about to call someone. Then he rang the bell. The sedan's silhouettes shifted. One head turned toward him. A moment later, the front door opened. A figure in dark clothing filled the doorway. Owen lifted his hand slightly, not surrender, more like emphasis. "I have information," Owen said, voice carrying just enough to sound drunk from across the street. "About Victor's book." The figure stepped aside, letting him in. The door shut. I did not watch the front any longer. I moved. I walked down the block, turned the corner, and found the service lane Owen had described. It ran behind the row of townhouses, narrow and dim, lined with trash bins and delivery doors. The smell back there was old food and wet brick. Halfway down the lane, a short iron gate blocked access to a small courtyard. The gate was locked with a simple latch and a padlock. I looked at the wall beside it. The brick was old, chipped in places, mortar crumbling. There were handholds if you were willing to scrape your palms. I set my backpack down gently, then climbed. My dress shoes slipped once, then found purchase. My fingers dug into the rough brick. The cold seeped into my bones through my sleeves. I hauled myself up and over, landing awkwardly on the other side with a soft thud that sounded loud in the quiet. I froze, listening. No voices from the courtyard. No footsteps. Only the distant city hum and the faint rush of traffic on a larger street nearby. The courtyard was small. A patch of stone. A narrow strip of dead winter plants. A back door with a glass pane covered by a thin curtain. A light glowed in the kitchen, beyond warm and domestic wrong for a place like this. The back door was locked. I tried the handle once, then let go. I did not rattle it. I did not test it again. To the side was a window cracked open an inch, just enough to let in air. The latch looked old. The gap looked intentional. My throat tightened. I did not know if it was an invitation or another trap. Either way, I had no time to stand outside and debate. I slid the window up slowly, the old wood scraping. I paused when it squeaked, then continued letting it move 1 careful inch at a time. When it was wide enough, I slipped inside, landing on a linoleum floor in a narrow laundry room. The air smelled like detergent and dust. I stood still until my breathing steadied, then eased the window down behind me, leaving it not quite shut. A faint murmur drifted through the wall, voices low and tense. I moved forward, slow shoes silent on the floor, and followed the sound into a darker hallway. The voices sharpened as I got closer. "It does not matter what he thinks he has." Grant Kessler said, his tone smooth with irritation. "The manuscript reads like confession. The public loves confession. They forget it in a week." Another voice, unfamiliar, answered. "And the journal." Grant's reply came quick. "The journal is leverage. The journal is danger." A third voice cut in, impatient. "What about the widow?" A pause. Then Grant, colder now. "She is a signature," he said. "She is money. She is a problem." My pulse hammered, but I kept moving, 1 step, then another, hugging the wall. A door stood slightly ajar at the end of the hall. Warm light spilled through the crack. I leaned toward it and looked in. Grant stood with his back half-turned, suit immaculate, hair perfect, one hand resting on the edge of a desk like he owned it. 2 men in expensive clothes stood near him, faces hard and blank. And in a chair between them sat Vivian Lang. Her hands were bound in front of her. A bruise darkened her cheekbone. Her white blouse was wrinkled, stained at the cuff, and her eyes were wide with a kind of focus that looked like she had chosen anger because fear was too expensive. She lifted her head slightly as if she sensed something beyond the door. Then one of the men leaned in and said something to her that made her flinch. Grant's voice stayed calm. "Sign," he said. "Do not make this difficult." Grant held a pen between two fingers like it was an extension of his hand, not a tool. The desk in front of him was too modern for this old townhouse glass-top metal frame. Nothing personal except one small object that looked out of place. A silver paper clip shaped like a leaf sat near the documents, bright under the lamp. Vivian's wrists were bound with a plastic tie. Not rope, not tape. Something clean, something meant for efficiency. Her shoulders were squared, chin lifted. She looked like she was holding herself together by force. One of the men leaned closer and slid a page toward her. "Sign," he said. Vivian stared at the paper, then at the pen. "I would rather chew my hand off," she said. The men exchanged a look. Grant's voice stayed calm. "Vivian, do not turn this into a performance." She laughed once dry. "You say that like you do not live for it." Grant's jaw tightened. "Your husband is gone. You have to be practical." "My husband is gone because you made him gone," Vivian said. For a moment, the room went very still. The two men did not move. They were used to stillness. Grant's gaze did not flicker. His eyes were the color of cold coffee. "You are upset," he said. "That is understandable." Vivian's smile showed no warmth. "That is what you tell yourself so you can sleep." Grant stepped closer. He held the pen out, hovering it over the paper like a blade. "Sign the transfer," he said. "Then you can go home. You can grieve in private. You can be safe." Vivian's eyes flashed. "Safe," she repeated, tasting the word. Like Victor was safe. One of the men struck her. It was not a dramatic punch. It was quick and controlled a flat backhand that snapped her head to the side. Her hair slid across her cheek. The bruise already forming darkened, as if her skin had been waiting to show it. My stomach turned. The hallway narrowed in my vision. Heat climbed up my neck. Vivian turned her face back slowly, meeting Grant's eyes. Her voice came out quieter, sharper. "Victor kept records," she said. "He kept everything, every payment, every name." Grant's expression barely changed, but I saw his fingers tighten around the pen. "Victor kept fantasies," he replied. "He kept ego. He kept a book he thought would make him a saint." Vivian's eyes lifted, and for a second I thought she was looking at me. Not directly. Not enough to give me away. Just a flick toward the crack in the door like she could feel air moving. "His pages are already out," she said. "You cannot burn what is already in other hands." Grant leaned down until his face was close to hers. His voice dropped smooth as varnish. "Other hands can be broken," he said. "People can be persuaded." The unfamiliar man spoke again, impatient. "We are running out of time." Grant straightened. He nodded once, a small decision made. "Then we stop asking," he said. One of the men reached for Vivian's bound hands. I did not think. Thinking would have taken too long. I scanned the hallway for anything heavy, anything loud. A tall ceramic vase stood on a narrow table a few feet behind me. It was blue and white, delicate, expensive. I lifted it with both hands, feeling its cold weight, then stepped back and let it fall. It hit the floor and shattered a crack like a gunshot ceramic, exploding into sharp pieces that skittered across the wood. Inside the room, Grant's head snapped toward the sound. "Check that," he said. A chair scraped. Footsteps came fast. The door opened wider, and one of the men stepped out into the hallway with a gun in his hand. Not held up like in movies. Held low, ready finger near the trigger. His eyes swept the hall. I pressed myself against the wall beside the door, lungs tight. He took one step, then another, scanning, moving toward the broken vase. When he passed me, I lunged. I drove my shoulder into his ribs and slammed him into the opposite wall. His breath left him in a grunt. The gun slipped from his hand and clattered across the floor, skidding past the ceramic shards. We went down hard, my knee striking wood pane, flashing bright. He was stronger than I was trained, practiced. He rolled with the impact and came up on top of me, hand at my throat. His fingers closed like a clamp. My vision tightened at the edges. I clawed at his wrist, trying to pry him off, but his grip did not budge. He leaned closer, face blank, as if this was just a job. A sound from inside the room, a chair tipping. Then the pressure on my throat vanished. The man jerked his grip, loosening. His body sagged forward. I gulped air and shoved him to the side, coughing. Vivian stood in the doorway, breathing hard. She held the base of a lamp in both hands like a club. The plastic tie still hung from one wrist, snapped, jagged end pointing out. Her eyes locked on mine. "Mason," she whispered, and the word carried relief and anger at once. I pushed myself up, throat burning. "Are you hurt?" I rasped. "Not yet," she said. Inside the room, a second chair scraped. Grant's voice cut through colder now. "Get in here." The other man appeared behind Grant, moving toward the doorway. Vivian raised the lamp base again. I stepped in front of her without thinking, hands up, palms open, trying to look like I was not a threat. I was a threat. I could feel it in my blood. The man moved toward me, and I hit him with my shoulder again, driving him back into the doorframe. He grunted, stumbling. Grant appeared fully in the doorway. He had a gun. He held it steady, arms straight, no tremor, no hesitation. The hallway light caught the barrel. For a split second, everything went silent. Even the city outside felt far away. "Back away," Grant said. Vivian's voice came sharp behind me. "Grant, stop!" Grant's eyes flicked to her, then to me. A small, ugly smile pulled at his mouth. "How touching," he said. "The widow and the editor." He squeezed the trigger. The sound was deafening in the narrow hallway. My ears rang. The air filled with the smell of burned metal. Vivian cried out. I turned and saw red blooming on her sleeve near the upper arm, spreading fast. The bullet had not hit deep, but blood looked dramatic on white, her face drained of color. "No," I said, and the word ripped out of me. Vivian's knees bent. I caught her with one arm and pulled her back against the wall, using my body as cover. Her breath came in tight gasps, teeth clenched. Grant kept the gun raised, eyes calm. "You should have gone home," he said to me. My heart hammered. My mind raced. I could not fight him. I could not outrun him with Vivian bleeding. I needed something else. The timer. Owen's dead man switch. 9:15. The press. I met Grant's gaze and made my voice steady even as my hand shook under Vivian's weight. "It is too late," I said. Grant's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Is it?" "Owen sent it," I said. "The recordings, the manuscript, everything. If he does not cancel, it publishes at 9:15. Grant's eyes narrowed. "You are bluffing." I swallowed, tasting copper. "Check your phone," I said. "If you have any friends left, they are already calling you." For a heartbeat, Grant did not move. The gun stayed pointed at my chest. His jaw worked as if the idea of losing control was an insult. Then his free hand slid into his pocket. He did not lower the gun. He did not look away from me while he pulled his phone out. He flicked the screen on with one thumb. The light from the phone lit his face from below, making his features look older, harder. His eyes scanned whatever he saw. Something changed. Not panic. Grant did not do panic, but color drained from his face. His lips parted slightly. The gun dipped a fraction. The second man behind him stepped closer, voice urgent. "We need to move." Grant's gaze snapped up to me. "What did you do?" he said. I kept my voice low. "What Victor planned," I replied. Vivian's hand gripped my sleeve with surprising strength. Her fingers were slick with blood. She leaned in close enough that her breath warmed my ear. "Do not let him take the journal," she whispered. Grant's expression twisted. Victor was going to destroy everything because he wanted to feel clean, he said. He was weak. Vivian lifted her chin, pale shaking eyes bright with fury. "He was tired," she said. "There is a difference." A distant sound rose through the house, faint at first, then clearer. Sirens. Not one. Several. The wail bounced off brick outside and threaded through the townhouse like a warning song. Grant heard it too. His eyes shifted toward the front of the building. The second man's shoulders tightened. They had expected to control the room. Sirens meant variables. Grant's gun lifted again for a brief second, aimed at me, aimed at Vivian, aimed at the problem that refused to stay solved. His eyes flicked to Vivian's bleeding arm, then to my face, then to the phone in his hand. He made a decision. "This is not finished," he said, voice tight. He stepped backward, pulling the second man with him. The third man, the one I had tackled, groaned and tried to rise. Grant did not look at him. He did not reach for him. He moved like a man saving only what mattered. Footsteps pounded downstairs. A door slammed. The back of the house shuddered as another exit opened. I stayed pressed against the wall, holding Vivian upright. My shirt stuck to her blood. The ink stain on my thumb mixed with red, turning the smear darker. "Mason," Vivian whispered, and her voice wavered. "It hurts." "I know," I said. I forced my hands to work. I pulled off my coat, then tore my shirt sleeve fabric, ripping with a sound that made my stomach twist. I wrapped the strip around her upper arm, tight enough to slow the bleeding, careful not to crush the wound. Vivian hissed, eyes squeezing shut. When she opened them again, she looked at me like she was trying to memorize my face in case she lost the chance. Downstairs, a man shouted. Another voice answered, loud, authoritative. The crash of a front door forced open. "Police," someone yelled. "Hands where we can see them." The words hit my body like cold water. Relief tried to rise. Fear kept it pinned down. I raised my free hand palm out while keeping Vivian steady with the other. "We are upstairs," I called. Footsteps thundered on the stairs. The hallway filled with harsh light as flashlights swept. Shadows jumped along the walls. A uniformed officer appeared, first weapon raised, eyes wide. Behind him, more officers, then men in plain clothes with clipped movements and faces that did not show surprise. One of them flashed a badge quickly. "Federal," he said, voice sharp. "Who are you?" "My name is Mason Reed," I said. My throat still burned from the choke. "She is Vivian Lang. She has been shot." A medic pushed through gloved hands already reaching. He glanced at the wound, then at Vivian's face. "Ma'am, can you walk?" Vivian nodded once, jaw clenched. "Yes," she said, and the word came out stubborn. They guided her carefully, one medic supporting her elbow. She winced but stayed upright. Her eyes stayed on me. I stepped forward with my hands still visible backpack strap digging into my shoulder. An agent looked at it immediately. "What is in the bag?" he asked. "Evidence," I said. His gaze sharpened. "Of what?" I swallowed. "Of Victor Lang," I said. "Of Grant Kessler." The agent's eyes flicked to another man, a quick silent exchange. From downstairs, Owen's voice rose rough and strained. "Reed." I leaned over the railing and saw him at the bottom of the stairs, hands up, two officers near him. His face was bruised, hair disheveled, but he was standing. He met my eyes and nodded once, a small hard confirmation that he was still in the game. The sirens outside kept screaming. Red and blue light pulsed through the windows, turning the hallway into a strobe of color. Vivian was guided past me toward the stairs, her blood leaving faint spots on the floor where it dripped. As she passed, she reached out with her uninjured hand and caught my fingers for a second. Her grip was cold, steady. "Do not let go," she whispered. I tightened my hold, just enough to answer without words, then released so they could move her. The air smelled of gunpowder and detergent and old wood. My hands shook now that I was no longer fighting to keep them still. The ink on my skin looked darker under the flashing lights, like it had finally decided to show itself. The agent took my backpack and pulled on gloves before he opened it. He slid the manuscript and the leather journal into clear evidence bags, sealing them with strips that snapped when he tore them free. "Where did you get these?" he asked. "In a boathouse on the Lang property," I said. My throat still burned. "They were left for me." He nodded once and handed the bagged pages to another agent as if the paper had teeth. Downstairs, Owen sat on a chair with a medic pressing gauze to a cut near his hairline. When Owen's eyes met mine, he gave a small nod, nothing more. Outside, red and blue light washed over the brick. Vivian was guided into an ambulance, jaw clenched against the pane. When she saw me, she lifted her uninjured hand and curled her fingers once. "I am here," I said. The medic shut the doors and the ambulance pulled away, siren rising into the night. A plain clothes agent drove me to a field office nearby. The room they put me in smelled of disinfectant and stale coffee. Questions came in a steady rhythm. Names times places. When I said Grant's name, the agent's pen paused. "Kessler has been on our board," he said. "We needed something that could stand up in court." "At least it arrived," I said. At 9:15, my phone vibrated on the table. A news alert flashed across the screen. "Executive tied to secret political funds recordings released." The agent turned my phone face down with 2 fingers gentle, like closing a lid. When they finally let me leave, it was after midnight. Owen stood in a hallway outside the interview room, shoulders slumped, face bruised where someone had grabbed him. "They did not catch him," he said. "Grant," I replied. Owen nodded. He ran when the sirens hit. An agent walked us to the exit. "Go somewhere safe," he said. "Do not go to your office. Do not open your door for anyone you do not know." Safe meant my mother's house in Connecticut. Ava ran to me the second I stepped inside, rabbit tucked under her arm. She pressed her face into my coat like she needed proof I had edges and weight. "You came back," she said. "I did," I whispered. Nora stood in the kitchen doorway, arms folded, eyes red. She looked at my throat and the scrape marks, then said later, as if she could hold her anger in her teeth until Ava went to bed. Ava pulled back and stared at my fingers. "You have dirt," she said. "It is ink," I told her. She reached into her pocket and handed me a paper crane, slightly crushed. "Keep it," she said. That night I sat at my mother's kitchen table with a mug of coffee that tasted like burnt comfort. Nora stood across from me, arms still folded, shoulders tight. "Did you bring this to my door?" she asked. "No," I said, "but it found me anyway." She stared at me a long moment, then slid her phone across the table. A missed call from an unknown number. 2 more. "If they call again, I call the police," she said. "Call me first," I replied. Nora's mouth tightened, then she nodded once. "Do not disappear," she said, and it was not a command so much as fear wearing a sharper shape. Upstairs, Ava slept with her rabbit tucked under her chin. I put the paper crane on the nightstand beside her wings, angled toward the window, and left the light on low. The next morning, I sat beside Vivian's hospital bed. The room was bright in a way that felt unforgiving. A monitor beeped steady small proof of life. Her arm was wrapped in white gauze. A bruise shaded her cheekbone. When she opened her eyes, she looked straight at me. "You stayed," she said, voice thick with medication. "I am still here," I replied. Her gaze drifted to my hand on the bed rail. The ink stain was darker now, mixed with dried blood at the edge of my thumb. I rubbed it, and it refused to lift. "They will call me crazy," Vivian murmured. "They will say I did this for attention." "I read his journal," I said. "The pages do not change." Vivian swallowed, then steadied herself. "I did not know Victor would send it to you," she said. "He set it down like a weight," I replied. "He decided I could carry what he could not." Vivian's fingers moved, searching. I took her hand. Her grip was cool but steady. "I meant what I said," she whispered. "Not today," I said. Vivian's eyes softened. "Not as a demand," she replied. "As a fact. I liked you before I had bruises to hide. Before I had a husband who treated every room like a contract." I squeezed her hand once, just enough to answer without making promises. 6 months later, Grant Kessler waited in federal custody, caught 2 states away with a lawyer and a suitcase that smelled like cash. Owen testified with the recorder on the table, voice steady. Vivian funded investigative reporting without putting her name in lights. On a warm afternoon, Ava and Vivian planted flowers in my backyard. Ava wore garden gloves too big for her hands and argued about where marigolds should go. Vivian laughed, then followed Ava's instructions like they mattered. Ava taped a new paper crane to the inside of the kitchen window so it could watch the garden. When the wind moved, its wings fluttered against the glass. At the table, I opened a notebook. The blank page looked like a dare. Vivian stood behind me close enough that I could smell soap and sunlight. "Right," she said. I set the pen down. Ink pooled, then flowed dark and clean. Outside, Ava laughed, and Vivian's voice joined hers, quiet and real, filling the yard with something that felt like air.